Hello, and welcome to Unscripted Leadership. I am your host, Heather Orrico, Vice President, Comcast Business. Unscripted Leadership focuses on Comcast Business's role in the tech industry and how it serves its clients. The podcast highlights executives' challenges in their respective industries and how technology is allowing better efficiencies and productivity. You can find us on all your favorite podcast sites, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. For our episode today, I have the privilege of talking with Jason Sankey, Chief Information Officer for the City of Atlanta. Welcome, Jason, to Unscripted Leadership.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We are glad to have you, and I am specifically glad to be reconnected with you because we've met a few times through the years, so glad to have you on the show today. You know, I think everybody listening, Jason, the first thing on their minds is you talking about your career journey. How did you get here? What are some of those key moments along the way that became really important as you grew in your leadership role?
So I actually started my career in New York City. I actually graduated from college. I graduated from Ohio University and got in a U-Haul truck and moved to New York City and didn't have a job and just started fresh. And I started actually with a law firm, Jones Day, Reeves and Pogue at the time. I spent a couple of years there as a litigation legal assistant. And then someone tapped me and said, "Hey, would you mind going to the trading floor? We have someone who has been with us for 30 years. They're getting ready to retire. Do you know Microsoft Excel?" And I said, "Of course," thinking everybody knows Microsoft Excel, but didn't know what they actually needed me to do. I said, "I will report there in the morning." They said, "No, we need you to go right now." I said, "Okay, let's go." So I went and I was a little nervous because Excel, there's very difficult sides to creating formulas within Excel, and there's easy things within Excel. But luckily for me, it was literally just a spreadsheet that they were keeping some records on. So I transferred over to that division on the trading floor, which was very exciting. And that's when I had my first experience with technology. I took that spreadsheet, which was a headache, and created an Access database for all those who remember Microsoft Access back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where it started. And it has been an upward journey ever since. And so I spent roughly 10 years with Citigroup, and then I transitioned over to the state of Ohio, where I still worked with Citigroup, but traveled back and forth to New York, and then came to a point where travel got a little crazy and decided to settle within Columbus, Ohio. And I had an opportunity to join the public sector. And after 2 years working at the county level, I became CIO with Franklin County and then CIO with the state of Ohio. And this opportunity came up here with the city of Atlanta back in 2021. And when I was with the state of Ohio, I was a CIO for the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. So you can imagine with the pandemic, you had unemployment, you had SNAP, TANF, anything that needed resources, it all went through that agency. And we had literally 14-hour days, 7 days a week, holidays, and I burned out really quickly. And this opportunity came about, and I relocated here to the Atlanta metro area, became the CIO for the city of Atlanta, and said to myself, why did I spend so much time in the cold north most of my life? In the snow, in the slush, in the ice.
That's right.
And now love it here in the South. And I really love being the CIO for such a great city.
So NYC to Ohio via U-Haul. I picked that up in there because we all remember those days. Look, you said something interesting in a minute, and I'm going to get into the public-private sector because I think that's so important to the background and your journey and what people want to hear. But also, you said something which was interesting. You made it when you were in Ohio to CIO in 2 years. Can you talk about, just quickly, what were the things that you did that stood out? That's a very fast career move. What are the things that you did? Help our audience make some of those moves.
I really have to give that credit to my time at Citigroup. So when I mentioned that I was working on the trading floor, it's an open floor and you're sitting next to managing directors, senior vice presidents, and everyone moved so fast. So if you can imagine the amount of time that the market is open and all the different activities that happen in that short period of time, you have to move fast. You have to think fast. You have to think critically. And in order to make it, you have to fit in very quickly. And so when I moved to Ohio, I remember one day I was crossing the street and everyone was standing there waiting for the light. And I just took off because in New York City, you don't wait for the light to turn green. And everyone looked at me like, what are you doing? The light is red. And so the way I moved, the way I thought, and the way I made decisions when I was at the Citibank level and transitioned that into the public sector, it worked really well because what I found was there was much slower pace, not only being with Ohio as opposed to New York City. And what I tend to do is move with a sense of urgency. So as I deliver whatever it is that I'm delivering, whatever role that I'm in, that's always stood out. And so I was on a fast journey where I got tapped a lot for opportunities. And I can't speak enough about the importance of networking, but I've gotten tapped for multiple opportunities throughout my career. But I put that back on the pedigree that happened throughout that journey with Citigroup.
That's amazing. You said a few things. One is, I think sense of urgency is so critical. Even when I'm interviewing talent, Jason, I'm trying to think of how do I uncover whether someone has high sense of urgency. It is critical in the way the world moves today. But you also said something about we're used to waiting for the light to turn green. And sometimes we can use our knowledge or even mind share maybe with others around us to say, hey, the path is clear, let's move, right? I don't know if you realize that you said that, but it was very powerful in the moment because it speaks to this notion of, hey, we're doing these things all the way, like we're trained, right, to do things this way, but sometimes we have to think outside of the box. That was a big part of your leadership journey too.
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out because one thing that stood out to me in that moment, there were no cars coming. So there was no risk involved. Just had to go across the street.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I love it. That was a huge nugget from you. So I know everybody listening is excited to get that one.
I've come to this realization recently that there are 4 types of people. The first type of person, they have a really great personality. The second type of person, they can execute. The third type has both, and that's very rare. Great personality and can execute. And then you have the fourth category where you can't do either. And throughout my career, I've always leaned into talent that could execute because that's what drives strategy forward. If you have strategy without execution, it's just paper. And I think, I wish I would have thought about this years ago. Because one thing that I've also realized is that you can't really force people to execute if it's not in their DNA, but you can augment and bring in those people who can execute and have people in the right roles. So going back to that lesson of moving quickly in that CIO role 2 years, if I would have had some of the knowledge that I have now back then, I even think I could be more effective because sometimes try to put the round peg in the square hole, even though it doesn't work that way all the time.
That's right. We've all been there. So we're all on that same journey with you. And looking back, we're headed forward, but what are the lessons we learned to take us to the next future step? I love this. I wrote it down, 4 types. 1 is great personality. 2 is ability to execute. And by the way, we should say personality speaks to camaraderie at work, teamwork, right? That's part of it, kind of being likable, easy to work with. 2 is execution, because we have to deliver on results around here and at the city of Atlanta, right? 3 is the unicorn, you get both. And then 4, we have to be careful because we don't have either. I wrote that down.
Indeed.
Very good. All right, we have to talk about this unique background that you have. You brought both public and private sector experience to the role that you're in now as the CIO for the city of Atlanta. So talk to us about how that has influenced your strategy to help organizations in your organization transform and build strong teams.
I will start by saying if I could go back in time and start my career over, I would actually start in the public sector. I may not have spent my entire career in the public sector, but I would have started in the public sector. And the reason I say that is the time that I spent on the private side, it was all towards the bottom line. And when you look at executing strategy, it's executing strategy mainly to generate revenue. What we do on the public sector side, and I've been on all three levels now, the state, the county, and now the city. I say I've done the trifecta, even though I don't know if that's a good thing, is everything that we do is for the benefit of someone. It's benefit of people who need our services and not so much a bottom line. And I think that's added a level of passion for what I do, where I really enjoyed my career in the private sector, but the passion was different. Having that passion early on in my career for the benefit of others, I think would have just been a better balance and not on the tail end of the experience. But as we go through building strong teams, I think the foundation of the private sector has helped a lot here within the public sector, because one thing that we struggle with on the public sector side of things is turnover, where we may not be able to build a good foundation of standard operating procedures. As an example, I heard when I stepped into the role of CIO here for the city, I was the 10th CIO over the past 10 years. Think about the level of disruption that brings when each new CIO comes on board and they have their own strategy. They bring all this disruption and there's no steady flow. Mm-hmm. So what I was able to bring was the experience of making sure that we have standard operating procedures, making sure we have clear defined policies, making sure that we have that operational foundation layer. And I'm actually coming up in June on 4 years. I can't believe 4 years have gone by so quickly, but that balance of learning how to create that structure for our teams on the private side has really helped out here on the public side.
It's so good to hear and to learn, I think, for many of us. One is you said a lot about people. You said it in your earlier examples when we started talking. You're talking about people now for the benefit of people, you said, in your current role, but also for the benefit of your internal teams. And how have you taken the knowledge through your career to better the team in general? So it's a great perspective.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I came on board, we had a strategy and I didn't want to disrupt that strategy, because I heard about all of this disruption over the years with the multiple CIOs. So what I did was I looked at it. I said, okay, we can tweak this a little bit, but we can still go for it. But what I noticed was missing was the focus on workforce development. So we didn't talk about how we were going to grow our employees, training, all of these things, upskilling. So we added a pillar, and it was workforce development to our strategic pillars.
That's great that you were able to bring that to the city of Atlanta and help them just flourish in this way. I will say, I know our team through the years has, always had a great partnership with the city of Atlanta, but to watch the result and the career growth of individuals on your team after you arrived has been incredible. So I'm a witness to what you've done. All right, let's talk a little bit about that strategy that you keep mentioning. So talk to us about the importance of digital transformation for government and our communities.
I'll start with Mayor Dickens and his 4 main pillars for our city. So he wants one safe city, a city of opportunity for all, a city built for the future, and an effective and ethical government. And when I heard that, the first thing that came to my mind was technology. And I said, technology is the nucleus that brings all of that together. Not many organizations and structures within organizations can say that they touch every strategy, every employee, every day. but technology can. We've already touched multiple levels of technology, and we're halfway through the day. And so that told me that we need to make sure that we are intentional to enable the city to execute on strategies around those 4 pillars. And we have 4 focus areas that align to those 4 pillars. And the one that aligns with digital transformation and the digital experience, we have this enhance our customer experience. And that is building a city built for the future, or assuring a city built for the future. And so in that, we're looking at a few things. One, we've launched a mobile innovation lab. And actually, this was one of the early projects that we worked with Comcast as a thought leader to help us think through this, was how do we bring technology to communities as opposed to having people feel the need to come to City Hall to interact with government. So we started reaching out to our community centers and taking conversations to the community and saying, as an example, when we launched our new 311 customer service app, we asked communities, how do you feel about technology and engaging with the city and through the platform we have today? Are there any enhancements that we're needing to make? And we got a lot of good information from that. And what's nice about that approach is we're building based on what the needs are of the community and not so much what we think the needs are.
That's
and
right.
That's a big distinction. Another piece of the digital transformation experience that we're trying to push out here within the city is making things easier. So I don't know if anyone interacted with city business, but we have a number of different departments. We have roughly around 30 different departments. But we don't want 30 different experiences. We want to make sure that when you engage with the city, you're getting that same high quality experience from a technology perspective, regardless of what your need is. And we are on our journey to that. We're actually looking at a number of things. I mentioned the 311 customer service. We now have a generative AI chatbot that we have in production today. We have some avatar interactive AI kiosks here in City Hall, so people don't have to necessarily speak to a person. They can interact with the kiosk, just trying to make things easier for the consumers. We're also looking at a fairly large initiative as we get ready for World Cup 2026. We have, I believe, 8 games here in Atlanta, and Atlanta is going to be the central hub to the US. But we want to make that experience one of the best experiences that anyone who's visiting our city can achieve. And when you think about it, you may not have accommodations right at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You may not be at the New Cigna Hotel. You may be in a neighboring county. Mm-hmm. So you're in a neighboring county and you don't speak English as your primary language, and you are in another country. There are a number of different things that if you think about to make someone feel comfortable, transportation, accommodations, food, all of these different things. We're working on a project right now where we're looking at the digital experience to enhance that visitor. So that way, when they get off the airplane, their experience starts and we follow them along their journey until they get back to the airport and get back on the plane to leave to their home destination.
You really talked about all the way through about meeting the customer, meeting the community where they are. So whether it's bringing the mobile innovation lab into the communities directly where they can interact with you, I love this concept of, hey, feedback from them is what's driving our strategy. That's excellent. But also, if you come in to meet with us in person, you can do that, but you can also digitally interact with us, all the way to this planning for the World Cup, which everybody is so excited about for the city of Atlanta and what all it means, and just being intentional about sticking with your community and the person who's engaging with these events in the city throughout the entire time, and really footprint, even if they cross in and out of areas, right, while they're in town, it sounds like.
Yes.
That is great. Well, you've already become an important hub. I've seen it happen a lot through your leadership in the last 4 years, very tech forward. What are the trends you're excited about next? 2025, sure, but maybe even beyond, Jason.
So it's funny that you say 2025. I had a gut check today where I looked at the calendar and just where our progress is. And I said, wow, we're almost through the first quarter of 2025. What happened?
Crazy.
And I think from a city perspective, we actually started hot. So we had the Peach Drop for New Year's. Thank you, Comcast, for your support on the Peach Drop. We had the snow event. We had the second snow event. We had the national championship game. Go Buckeyes. So we've been very busy in this start to 2025. But I'm excited because the way technology is moving, I can't honestly say where we'll be in August of 2025. It helps us and hinders us because as you build a strategy, things change so quickly that we have to be a little more nimble than we needed to in the past. But I'm really excited about what we're doing in the artificial intelligence space. We have good partners that we are engaged with, and I'm interested to see how that goes. We just started a Microsoft Copilot. We are getting great reviews thus far around efficiencies. But when you talk about government, there's the internal piece and there's the external piece. I don't want to lose sight with all of the rapid change in technology on that external experience because things like public safety, as an example, if technology fails, people are put in potential harm's way.
Right. Yeah, I know you've always been very thought forward, or I will say tech forward as it relates to safety, just in our conversations. Public safety, how do we take care of our people? It's been great to hear you always talk about that first. Well, I have to ask you one last question. I have to share a little something first, which I'm not sure if you know. I was roughly 12 years ago the first salesperson to partner with the city of Atlanta for Ethernet services for Wi-Fi in the parks. That helped me in my career learn what that could mean for a city, how it could potentially combat crime, to our earlier conversation. We have since grown our partnership to include things like service to the community centers. You just said, and we're honored to help enable the famous Atlanta Peach Drop. So we are very grateful at Comcast Business for the work we get to do with you and your team. Can you share with the audience here why Comcast Business is one of your chosen providers?
The first thing I'll say is anytime I call on Comcast, you guys are there. You guys are there with solutions and always in a position to provide assistance. True story. I had a meeting Monday morning at 8:30, and we were talking about this initiative we're getting ready to kick off here with the city. It's an amnesty program you'll be hearing about here in the very near future. And a concern was raised regarding some other programs that we've had at like churches and other venues, and it was around Wi-Fi and access. And I said, well, wait a minute, if we have Wi-Fi issues, we can call Comcast. They can get a truck here and we can make sure that connectivity isn't an issue. That's what makes this partnership unique. And since I've been here with the city, every time that I've called on Comcast, you guys have been there. The other thing that I'll say, and you mentioned this around what was done with the community centers, and we have 25 community centers where Comcast actually took the initiative to upgrade our infrastructure at those facilities. And that was a huge deal because going back to making sure that we have a seamless experience for our community, our customers, that's where they interact mostly with the city is through our recreation centers. Great partnership as we brought out the gaming opportunities within our rec centers. That's why I feel like we've had such a strong partnership throughout my time here.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those moments with us. I do believe, and you said it, it's your words, that the local presence, it's part of our commitment to our customers and our partners, Makes all the world a difference. We are there in person with you whenever you need us. And just being tech forward on our side too, meaning that when there's an opportunity to upgrade, enhance, or scale for you, a lot of the times we're doing that proactively, but certainly in partnership with you and what makes sense for your needs. Thank you.
Thank you for being such a great partner.
We could not agree more. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been my pleasure to know you and for me and our audience to hear more about you and your strategic vision today. For our listeners out there, Comcast Business offers Ethernet solutions, dedicated internet, Wi-Fi, mobile solutions, voice solutions, and managed enterprise and security solutions to help organizations of all sizes transform their business. Talk to us today to find out how we can help your business or government grow and thrive. You can find the Unscripted Leadership podcast published monthly, so we hope you will continue to tune in with us next month and in the future. Thank you all so much for joining us today.